Um, Today we're talking about Invisible City. This is a title of a book, as we can see in the next slides, a title of a book of Italo Calvino. Cities are not just buildings, squares, monuments, fountains, or towers. These are built by the communities that inhabits them. So the city is therefore a place where a community lives, with its daily routines, experience, its desire, and its language, both verbal and visual. Across epochs, each has left materials and immaterials heritage that has been handed down. The intangible components of the city are the topic of this lesson. So let's try to find how to understand the invisible city. Um, I find this article of Renzo Piano a few days ago was published on Corriere della Sera the April 2 of 2020, so a few days ago. And obviously was talking about what's going to happen in the city in these days. And I think it was very interesting for us to start from this. And he said, I'm keeping an eye to Beaubourg was the Centre Pompidou that you can see in the city in a picture was his work made 20 more than 20 I'm thinking no, it was 40 years ago, 1980 more or less, that time, and was one of the most live place in Paris. It's very interesting. And he said it's 1 kilometer from home and it is empty. I love the city as an institution, as an idea, as a place of civilization. I love squares, streets, bridges. They are all empty. What I see is absurd. I lack the words to say it. Can we say emptiness? To one who lives on the idea of the city, of building it, of creative spaces where the fantastic ritual of being together is celebrated, of mixing one experiences, of transforming diversity into value, all this give a deep sadness. And I think this was the point where we have to start, that what the city is thinking about this idea that now we are all deeply sad because the city is not what exactly have to be because of we miss of this life inside the city. So the book of Calvino, Invisible City, was quite interesting. He was a Calvino explore imagination and imaginable through description of cities by the explorer, the merchant Marco Polo. His book is framed as a conversation between the elderly but busy Emperor Kublai Khan and Polo himself. The majority of the book consists in a brief prose poem describing 55 fictitious cities that are narrated by Polo. Many of which can be read as parables of meditation on culture, a language, time, memory, death, or the general nature of human experience. In one case exchange in the middle of the book, Kublai prods Polo to tell him of the one city he has never mentioned directly, his hometown. And Polo responds, every time I describe a city, I'm saying something about Venice. Now, this is a case because the description of all the city is just, in the end, a description of one city. That's probably the city of everybody, and all the city together. But Calvino started from an original book that was made from Marco Polo himself and transcription of his travel and from Rustichello da Pisa, exactly. And with this idea, he divided the city in a different category. This was very, very strong structure in this book that he studied very well when he was writing. And he decided to divide the city in this sort of category. We can see the all of them: city and memory, city and desire, city and sign, think city. So we now start to see some of this category in this lesson. We see a couple of them, then some of them in the next one. We can explore all. Will be amazing, but we probably need I don't know 10 lessons. But anyway, this is just a way to introduce this, and I hope is a way to to inspire you to read this book that is very simple and it's very, very interesting. So I find in the end of the Italian publication of this book an afterword made from Pier Paolo Pasolini that was an intellectual very important in 19 in the second half of the 19th 20th century in Italy. He was very very full of he made a lot of experience in term because he was a film director, he was a writer, he was a poet, he was a journalist, so he made a lot of work and introduced. Okay, no, it's just not introduced, but he made his right on the Calvino, and I take this part that is very interesting. He said Calvino does not invent anything just to invent. He simply focuses on a real impression, one of many intolerable shock we experience, noon or twilight, between season or heat waves, in the most familiar corner of cities unknown or known, where we live, and while feeling it, in all its poignant, dreamlike, and most unexpected quality, he analyzes it. The separate, dissembled piece of this analysis are reprojected into the void and into the cosmic silence where fantasy reconstructs dreams. It is therefore always a basis of real sensitivities that provides materials for Calvino poetic and ideological summits. The two things are interesting. The way he used to analyze the city that was with this sensibility that Pasolino say, separate this aspect, this feeling of the city, and reconstruct them in this level that is between dream and fantasy, and this is something that is very inspiring, I think, for our way to see the city. One of the city belongs to the category city and memory, and is called Zaira. This is a short part of the description of the city. And he said, the city, however, does not tell its past, but contain it like the lines of a hand written in the corners of the streets, the grating of the windows, the banister of the step, the antenna and lightning rods, the poles of the flags, every segment marked in turn with scratches, indentations, and scrolls. And thinking about this, one of the complex, the building that I think was more full of this sequence of, no, it's probably one of the most complex I never see, is Santa Maria della Scala in Siena. It's a complex of building located in Siena in the front of the cathedral. You can see the cathedral here on this side. I show you. This is the main facade of the cathedral in Siena, and all the complex is this big, huge complex. This is a sort of one building made of the addition of different, and it was founded in 1898, so it's very old, as an hospital and an accommodation for pilgrims, and it has transformed across the centuries, integrating an urban road another part of the city to arrive to this current dimension. It was the city hospital until 1980s, and today is a museum. So you see on the left side, the left picture, one of this main space dedicated name the long nave dedicated to host the pilgrims in that time, and they are called pellegrinai. And so this is the two plans of this complex. You can see the dimension we talked before. It looks like really a part of the city, and it is part of the city. So the two plans are on the two of we consider the most important levels. There are a lot of levels because obviously I think 7, 8, 9, 10, I don't know. But consider that on the left side you see the main level facing the piazza. There are the most important spaces, and I talked before about the pellegrinai, the sort of long nave oriented between the square with the cathedral and the countryside, no? The view of the countryside. And on the right, we are down this level, so under the level of the piazza, and we can see the original road that was this one. Mhm. Assimilated as an internal pathway leading all these small spaces that belongs to the confraternities and a sequence of galleries carved out of the rock, and you can see these are all inside the rock under the main part of the building and under the square, and these are very impressive place with the testimoniances with part of the history of the city. Another place that probably we talk about this was I consider very interesting is the Duomo in Syracuse. That's a city of Sicily, in the south of Sicily. And there is this description of Lawrence Darrell that was, I think, very interesting. She said, starting with the Greek temple, embedded the whole in a Christian edifice, to which you later add the normal facade, which gets knocked down by the great earthquake in 1693. Untaunted by this, you get busy once more and completely changing direction, replace the old facade with a devilish graceful Baroque composition dated around 1728-1755. And you can see here two pictures about this place. This is the main piazza, and the dome is on the left side. You can see the Baroque facade here, no? The church. But the Greek temple is still visible outside and inside. You can see the Doric columns, no? On the facade of the church and inside the church. And there are so many parts of this church that are interesting and represent all this story. For example, the great stone vase that was transformed in a baptismal font in Norman period. This is a Greek vase transformed, and so this was a Greek temple, and was also became a Catholic church. And when the Arabian arrived, it was also a mosque, and so essentially every part of this is a reminder of the history of the city. And also every place in the city is linked to a story. Every simple house, every corner, every as Calvino said, all elements as memory act as a memory of this story. And one, for example, that you know very well was Porta Valbona, no? That introduced you in Piazza del Mercatale. That was built for the occasion of wedding of Federico Ubaldo della Rovere with Maria de' Medici. In fact, you can read their name in the inscription on the main arch, and this inscription remember has the two spouses and what happened in that time. But another example, very I think is a perfect example of memory. Now the memory is also reconstructing the past. And also Renzo Piano in the same interview was talking about this building. And he said the temple of the highest shrine is destroyed and rebuilt every 20 years. In the East, eternity is not building forever but continuously. So young people arrive at the temple in their 20s, see how it's done, and rebuild in their 40s, then remain to explain it to the 20 years olds. It is a good metaphor for life. First you learn, then you do, then you teach. It is the young people who will save the earth. Young people are the messages we send to a world that we will never see. They are not the ones to climb on our shoulders. We are the ones to climb their shoulders, to glimpse the things that we'll not be able to experience. Very inspiring, in my opinion. And something more about this temple, this place. Um, it is built in the ancient Japanese style with this wood coming from Japanese cypress. They call it hinoki, and it's very simple and painted just with this material. This temple was beginning in 17th century, and with the building of two shrines at the bridge leading each shrine compound, and were reconstructed every 20 years in a ritual called the Shikinen Sengu. It's a big area that comprehends also the woods and an amazing natural area. That tradition has been carried on almost continuously, except a period between 15th and 16th century. Trees used for building materials are raised in the extensive forests that are part of the shrine complex. The reconstruction, completed in 2013, was capped in October by a ceremony, attended by tens of thousands of people, in which deities were ritually transferred from the old structure to the new ones. And the current building are the 62 time that was reconstruction. This is amazing, no? So it is the 62 generation that are working in the same way, with the same materials, with the same details, with the same technology, to the same building. And the next one is scheduled for 2033. But another category that was Calvino chose was city and desire. And one of the cities is Fedora. And in the book is described in this way. In the center of Fedora, that grey stone metropolis, stands a metal building with a crystal globe in every room. Looking into each globe, you see a blue city, the model of a different Fedora. These are the forms the city could have taken if, for one reason or another, it had not become what we see today. In every age, someone looking at Fedora as it was imagined a way of making it the ideal city. The ideal city is deeply linked to desire for knowledge and exchange of knowledge. It is also the desire to build a space that corresponds to our needs as individuals and those of our community. A desire for a place more akin to ourselves, a common and safe refuge, the destination on a journey, a place where we can discover our differences. Uh, the ideal city has been a constant desire in human history. And we have a lot of representation. We think about the paintings we saw before that is in Baltimore now, but it's part of this sequence of this major ideal city, major Renaissance time. We saw one last time, and one is obviously in Urbino, you know very well. But also there are a lot of truly built city, such as Gran Michele in Sicily that you see on the left, and Palmanova in Veneto. Both of these are in Italy, and you can see how strong was geometry and the idea of that this ideal city was built on this kind of a strong design of 6 or 8 or 10 side, no? The desire for a place that represents our daily existence as a stage. This is another point of view, no? In the sense, I mean, in the city we are protagonists, and the scenes change because the city has a different place for each of our moods, for each emotion. For this reason, the city has always been the ideal scenes for any theatrical performance. There is an analogy, no, between the scenes of the stage and the city. But it's all, and you can see the city in the stage, but we also see the theater in the city. No? For example, we can see in the scenes from the 5045 book written by Sebastiano Serlio how the image of the city were brought to a stage, acting as a unifying backdrop for theatrical performances, mirroring of the lives of the audience of those times. The presence of familiar urban elements heightens the context of emotional lives made real, credible, and sophisticated. But one of the most interesting, important example was the theater made from Palladio and the stage, particularly made from Vincenzo Scamozzi in 5085. This is an extraordinary example of scenes of city life with a remarkable three-dimension built-in perspective that give us the magical depth to the stage performance. You know that is very seems an infinite perspective, but it's a very short dimension. No? So it's an illusion, but it's give us the perfect idea to be in the city. City projects with space of a new dimension, for example, a century later, an immense square such as those designed by Giovanni Antolini in Milan, where he was called in 1801 as architect and director of work to build the Bonaparte Forum. We are in 1801, so during the Napoleone Bonaparte time. No? The plan involved the construction of a large circular square. We're talking about 420 meters in diameter, with the Castello Sforzesco, that still exists, in the center and the public utility building on the edges, such as town hall, the bath, the museum, the customs, the stocks exchange, the pantheon, and also a hall for people assemblies. Due to the huge cost and the revolutionary nature of the proposal for the forum, the project was never carried out. However, the sign of the plan in the city remain, and for Bonaparte exists as a different, is smaller. The and then the largest park in the history city of Milan remain instead of the immense square. But you can see the shape of this round circle still visible. Another example are the building of Louis Boulet. They are nothing but architectural exploration that cannot be implemented. The extraordinary dimension and the absence of decoration seems to us that he want to project the building and the city toward a different space, an infinity beyond our measure. Some of his most famous projects fit into this context, such as the Hall for Expansions and the Natural Library, the Museum of the Statues, and the famous Man on the Cenotaph of Newton. And in the early 19th, Antonio Santelias, that was considered a futurist architect, designed develop futuristic themes and intuition such as those of anti-decorativism, the transience of architecture, the world as a city connected by aerial communications, the mobile home aerodynamic vehicles, domination over sky, land, and sea. His design were inspiring for director Fritz Lang in his film Metropolis, and certainly his production includes one of the evolutionary paths of 20th century architecture. Even today, we are looking for another city. I know it's a long story, but I just chose to picture, to pass from the Frank Lloyd Wright, it's the project of Broad City, of and another project on the right side of Stefano Boeri for a smart city in Cancun, Mexico. And so this tension has never faded for example, in the search of a new interaction between architecture and natural environment. But city and desire are also a different point of view. The Spina, for example, and it's described in this way, can be reached in two ways, by ship or camel, and the city displays one face to the traveler arriving overland and on a different one to him arrived by the sea. So each city receives its form from the desert it opposes. And so the camel driver and the sailor see the Spina, a border city between two deserts. That is interesting, considering the picture, the lessons we made, the last two lessons about city and territory, and the relation between a city and a territory. We are talking about a city that's between sea and desert. This is. I suggest you to think about this. But cities, and in particular ports, are the destination and desire of all travelers. Cities built on the sea are on the border between two natural elements and have always been the physical medium for moving from one element to the other. They were also places for collecting goods and products that came in from other places. In the ports, you can see something of the place of these places and that were miles and miles away, and smell them and taste their flavor. And cities like Venice are the perfect example of this idea, and they can be defined as a port city. They were, in fact, the place where goods and knowledge between different worlds and culture exchanged. They were sea and they were land. They were east and they were west. This wealth of experiences crystallize in building and public space and produce the beauty that we still see, and that has made cities as places of poets, artists, and thinkers, fulfilling a desire of inspiration for many. With these amazing painter made from William Turner in Venice. And we know this way to see the city, especially Venice, was so interesting, because it was the first probably to understand how the light in this city was so peculiar. But even today, cities are places of desire. And some of them, like Dubai, for example, have been built to constantly feed this desire. Between desert and sea, earth and sky, east and west, sacred and profane. Thank you.